Oh, hello. My name's Christina, here to talk about money. And in particular, the market. This week, I'm calling it Slow Dance. If you're familiar with John Legend's song, Slow Dance, to me, that's kind of where things are. Again, things are slowing down. They're not stopping. We're not jumping off the cliff here, but things are slowing down. And it's got an awful lot of people really, really nervous, and everybody's trying to scramble around and try to figure out what it all means and what to do with it all. First and foremost, hopefully the government shutdown stops. We are past 30, I think we're at day 33 of the government shutdown. So it means our government has officially been shut down for almost 10% of a year. We are like 2 days shy of that, 2.5. That's pretty crazy. Hopefully that changes and everybody figures that out. Interest rates. Our weekly update in terms of interest rates from the lenders within house. Their 30-year fixed rate at 4 1/8 for conforming and jumbo. 15-year fix is at 3 3/8, and for the conforming jumbo is at 3 3/4. 10-year 4%. Jumbo's at 3.75. 7-year for conforming 3 7/8. 3.5 for the jumbo. 5-year fixed 3 5/8, and for the jumbo 3.5 for conforming high balance. 30-year fixed at 4%. 15-year fixed at 3 5/8. So still, actually, I think these may have been better than the week before. Being able to look at the sheet and see that the majority of the numbers are south of 4 is good. However, obviously, 9 times out of 10, people are opting for a 30-year fixed or an ARM. We don't have the ARM rates listed here, but even 4 1/8, that's not the end of the world. I mean, it's not ideal, but it's just how life goes. So there were some national numbers that came out basically saying that sales have dropped nationally by 6.4%, and the Wall Street Journal said that home sales dropped in December, price increases slowed. It's more or less, the frustrating thing about trying to talk about some of this on a week-to-week basis is you can see it coming. You see it coming in terms of affordability, interest rates, tax legislation. So I feel like a lot of this is redundant. It's just a matter of continuing to talk about, hey, this is what's going on. Whether it's the stock market as well. NASDAQ was down, Dow was up. Call it a bit of a wash. And it just seems like across the board, the way you look at it, it's kind of a wash. That's why I say it's a slow dance. It's like, and because stuff is still moving, still happening, nothing's really changed. People are still going to have life changes that impact their decisions about how they go about their lives. Whether it's because your family's growing, you're pregnant and you need a bigger house, or you're empty nesters and you need to downsize. There's always going to be life changes. Or like maybe you're moving across the country to get a job. Or I all of a sudden have a lot of investor clients that are coming out of the woodwork that are like, it's go time. Let's do this. And again, I feel like I've been saying this for a couple months now. Yeah, investors, go time. Hit the ground running. There was one property in particular that just fries me like no other. Duplex. Guy bought it about 1.5 years ago. Had to sell due to medical issues. That guy took a massive haircut. He bought it, I want to say, for 1350, ended up selling for below 115 in a year and a half. So that guy just sat and took a bath of at least 200 grand, just gone. And the guy was probably making some money on the property as he owned it, but not enough to cover that kind of a loss. That's a significant loss. And unless he's, which sometimes people like to do for tax purposes one way or another, but come on. That's in part why I did this. Don't take a bath on 200 grand. Stupid. Well, I mean, most people don't have the ability to lose that kind of money. So, stupid. Yeah, don't do it. Just don't do it. So, sales dropped in December by 6.4%. This means that the volume of sales has dropped by that much. Said it a couple weeks ago. Locally, we've dropped by 25%, and that was for the last quarter of 2018. So we're obviously more of a loss than what we're at nationally. But again, this is not surprising at all. What's happening is people are making more money, the economy's moving, so it's not Reagan trickle-down economics, but it's people are employed. I mean, jobs ratings are still good. I mean, we're now kind of at the point where people are employed, so there's some ebb and flow that way, so we're not seeing the dramatic decreases in terms of reducing the joblessness, because we're kind of at capacity. And obviously with the government shutdown, it's just one giant mess. But so theoretically what's happening is you have a lot of people who are making money, who are putting money away, who are saving up to buy a house. Great. So what happens is maybe you're living in a location like Orange County, where it's nice, it's very expensive, and it's a desirable place to live. Great. Well, you get to a point where you decide, okay, met my significant other, happy camper about it. We want to do white picket fence lifestyle and run off and sail off into the sunset. Great. Well, then you pick your head up out of the dirt, take a look at what it costs to raise a family around here, and think, holy hell, that ain't gonna work. So, for instance, my facialist, she moved to Idaho. Not necessarily for that reason, but it just means that she can be a stay-at-home mom as opposed to she work, her husband work, and then they have to figure out childcare. So that's how they decided to shake things up. I mean, there's another friend of mine moved to Portland. I had another friend who moved to Germany. People move out of California because ultimately it's pretty expensive to be here. So what I'm seeing is, and there were actually reports, I think, coming out last year, if not longer ago, about San Francisco and New York in particular, where rents were actually decreasing because people just stopped going to those places in order to build their life. They either moved out because it was too expensive or something or other, but prices actually saw a little bit of a dip in those places. Obviously, they're big cities. Those were the places that came back first and hardest. I think Colorado is still cruising, but the affordability there is significantly better than it is obviously in New York and San Francisco. But I referenced Colorado because it was one of the areas that came back, I think, harder than most places. So if you look at your pre-recession high and post-recession high, Colorado was very successful. Now there are, of course, other cities including Atlanta, Portland, Seattle. These still urban areas, but maybe not nearly as on the radar as, say, like in New York, San Francisco, or LA are, that did pretty well. But Colorado was kind of one of these sleepers, and I think part of it too has to do with their tax legislation. This is where I say it's above my pay grade, but Colorado did well. So theoretically what's happening is people like my facialists, they move out of state they're still making okay money, especially because her husband got a job up there, and they're able to live off one salary, buy another house. I mean, they own a house here, but now they own a house, and she can be a stay-at-home mom and kind of live their life that way. So what that tells me is that we're displacing purchasing power more throughout the country, right? So that means that they were in California and that worked okay, but they moved to some place where they're more financially comfortable, quote unquote comfortable, and so you take money out of an area like Orange County and you put it in a place like Idaho. So it's not to say that that money is gone or it doesn't exist anymore, it just moved. And it's moving to these places where it's arguably more affordable. So it's most akin to basically a 1031 exchange. So the concept behind a 1031 exchange is if you are a landlord and you own it, say again, we'll go with something simple, a duplex. A 1031 exchange basically means that if you go to sell that duplex and you want to sell the duplex, you have one of two options. One of which is to take a capital gains tax hit, pending you made money. So hypothetically, we'll say we weren't like that guy who lost 200 grand, and we're like somebody else who was successful, where they bought a property for $1 million, hypothetically, let's take the numbers. Bought a property for $1 million, then you buy the property for $1 million, 10 years goes by, now it's worth 1.5. California, swing like that is fully possible. So now it's worth 1.5, and they're thinking, hot diggity, I just increased say you bought it all cash, I increased my equity by 50%. Move from $1 million to 1.5, increase it by 500 grand. I'm killing it. Great, let's sell it. Well, you can either take the capital gains tax hit of 500 grand, and I believe you get taxed at a rate of like 30 to 40%. Some toasty number that way. Or what you can do is say, okay, don't want to do that. Don't want to lose 200 grand. Well, 150, 200 grand after you pay realtor fees and all this stuff. Just to say bye, in which case you really only make 25% bump. So it gets cut in half almost. So you want to recoup more of that gain. The way you can do that is to use an accommodator, which basically means that you cannot touch the money. Basically telling escrow, government, everybody that, yep, I did well in this. I'm going to go park my money here. I can't touch it. I have no access to it. And then it's going to go, new tax legislation, at least for the state of California, says it has to go right back into real property. It used to be able that you could transfer between things like cell towers, water rights, different things that way. Now they're saying that you need to trade like for like. So that's kind of a pain. But real estate is one of those old school businesses. Generally does okay. Not the end of the world. So when you do something like that, the state then asks that if you're going to use the accommodator and go through this 1031 exchange process, you have to buy a property of equal or greater value. Basically what the state wants, and actually Fed wants, because you can, it's my understanding that you can do this across states, so federally, they want you to continue to get that money in the economy and working and benefiting ideally everybody. Because if all of a sudden everybody was like, oh no, the sky is falling, and everybody sold their property, don't know who to, but say they all sell at the same time, then all of a sudden you've removed all of this equity, all of this capital from the economy, and I don't know, maybe park in an offshore account and put it in dirt in Costa Rica. That was a huge phase for a while where people were going down and buying crap in Costa Rica. To me, the example of the facialist moving from California to Idaho is a little bit like that, where it's a little bit like executing the 1031 exchange. Money's not gone from the economy, it just got displaced to a more affordable area. So these places that, the zip codes that are more expensive are not, I don't want to say they're going to see a significant swing. We do have greater appreciation swings than most other locations, but it just means that we're going to see more hesitation and more of this slow dance thing happening than you will in other locations. And I'm sorry for my voice. Definitely coming down with something. It's cold for Southern California standards. And my throat hurt this morning. So, do my damnedest. And there's all sorts of other examples that kind of fit that bill. Like, the city of Laguna doesn't allow you to take a duplex, scrape it, and build a single family house without charging you for removing some of their potential rental inventory. So for instance, there's a triplex listed, killer piece of property. Unbelievable. Listing agent said that they already had an offer, and more than likely the buyer of the property was going to scrape the majority of the property and then keep a kicker unit in the back. So they would have removed one unit of inventory, taking it from a triplex to a duplex, and gone about things that way. So, and I need to double check, but I think they charge something like $250,000 for every unit that gets removed. Because they're trying to navigate what they think is a shortage of housing, and trying to make sure that their market doesn't completely blow up that way. And then we had new legislation for ADUs and all this other stuff, so it's hard to figure as to what exactly the volume of inventory how it has changed. I mean, they've talked about rent control, they've talked about ADUs, they've talked about all sorts of stuff. The stupid thing is that when you add a kicker unit, the city freaks out and they want you to remove it. So there's a lot of conflicting desires that way. But the $250,000 hypothetical $250,000 hit, that's another good example of they just don't want to take that money out, or it's being displaced elsewhere or something really. So again, it's why when we had our local numbers of dropping by 25%, it's significantly more than 4 times, or about 4 times as much as what it is nationally. Let's see. Next bit. White House economist says economy may not grow in first quarter. Not all that surprised if the government's still closed. Hard to keep things humming. Especially if you have X numbers of millions or hundreds of thousands of people out of work. They don't have money coming in the door. They don't have more money to spend. DC is probably an absolute mess. Well, and I'll continue to talk about the rest as to why that's a problem. This is the one that makes me a little nervous. No pay stub, no problem. Unconventional mortgages make a comeback. Wall Street Journal is basically saying that lenders are turning to borrowers with harder to document finances, helping growth in the kind of home loans paying for role in housing meltdown. Since I've started doing this, that is the one bit of news that legitimately makes me nervous. last week, despite slowing down, despite slowing economy, despite lack of growth, which is something to talk about there. Basics were still good. There's a terminology here that I'm just not remembering. But it's like the individual elements were still good. It's like it's like when you go shopping and say like there's this killer name brand thing that you just love. Well, stupidly enough, you can probably find the same darn thing for a whole hell of a lot cheaper. Now, if you're looking at something from like Chanel, yeah, probably not going to be the same. But there's a whole section in Devil Wears Prada about cerulean blue, and that's a perfect example. I highly recommend finding that little clip, because when Meryl Streep talks about it, it's perfect. Basically, I understand here's the high expensive side of things, but there's a way to copy it. Target often does copies. Wayfair often has copies. In all honesty, my mom it's like one of her favorite pastimes is finding copies of all this crap that other people do, including Restoration Hardware, Pottery Barn, all the above. Because otherwise, you have to spend $10,000 on a stupid couch. It's crazy. Sometimes those $10,000 couches are worth it because they are that pretty. But 9 times out of 10, go do something better with your money than burn it on a couch. But thinking about the fact that there's a good amount of equity in homes, there were no problem banks, people are paying their bills. That's a good sign. Those are good characteristics. It's like good skill set. Like maybe more akin to sports of like, if somebody's fast, somebody can dribble, somebody can throw. Some of the other stuff is kind of cherries on top, but when you look at somebody like LeBron James or what was his name? Blake Davis, I think is his name. He was a center for the Clippers. Those guys are just athletes. Like, they could do pretty much anything they wanted, I'm sure. If you've ever had the chance to see them in person, it's unbelievable. Like watching basketball, so I went to a game. And you can just see, despite the fact that those guys are like almost 7 feet tall, they know how to move. And oftentimes when you see athletes that get to be that big, they struggle to kind of have this body awareness of their limbs and whatnot. And just, a guy I used to play tennis with, and a guy my brother used to play baseball with. And we used to joke, it's just like permanently junior high, like all of a sudden your limbs are shoot up a foot and you don't know where stuff starts and ends because you're just growing so fast. Well, these guys, on the other hand, have an unbelievable level of body awareness. And it's unbeatable. So when I look at something like our economy right now with housing, I'm like, yeah, you're like a pro athlete, crushing it. Like, I understand, may have missed a couple free throws or something or other, so not doing so great there. But across the board, game's still going pretty well. Like, we're still in the game, not out, for sure. When I look at something like unconventional mortgages making a comeback, the entire reason that our economy is as stable and in as good a shape as it is, because the lending restrictions have been so tight. And it's because a lot of people can't figure out for themselves what they can and cannot afford. They wait for banks to tell them. And that's how we got into the giant fiasco last time around. And that's in part why I wanted to start this. Everybody should figure out what they can and can't afford, because you hit 18 and all of a sudden you're like a participant in the world. And nobody ever teaches you how to do anything financially. Nobody teaches you how to do your taxes. Nobody teaches you how to balance a checkbook. Probably don't even know what that means, balance a checkbook. It's hard, but you just... And that makes me feel old because it's something my grandmother would have said. But it's not a skill set you learn. And it just irritates me. So stuff like this makes me a little nervous. Depends on how large a proportion of the economy they play and how many people actually get these types of loans, but fundamentals. That's what I was thinking. The fundamentals of the economy look good. This one makes me a little nervous though. So we shall see what that looks like. Okay, back to Bill McBride stuff. Existing home sales decreased to 4.99. Again, this is the 6.4% drop that we were talking about. In terms of where we are going back over the past few years, I dropped to this point in 2015, maybe 2014. Obviously, that was a slightly different market, but it's also to be expected because although there are builders, they're not adding to the inventory quite as aggressively as they were, and that makes a difference. And I know a lot of people like to reference existing inventory sales as a way for kind of getting a barometer on things. It just means it's not a new construction home sale. And if that, at least locally, that supposedly represented 10% of the population of sales for all of 2018. I mean, look, there's a lot of building going on still. To me, it's a tough thing to really calculate and to determine how close or off we are, because you have to take into account population growth. To what extent are we adding inventory through new construction? It's a fuzzy bit to try to give an opinion on that way. Everything is more or less about the drop in existing home sales, because that was a big report to be dropping by 6.2%. I'm sorry, I mean 6.4. Yeah, and they're not releasing all of it because of the government shutdown. It does say inventory was up by 6.2% nationally. Increased inventory is not comparable to 05-06 numbers. Let's see what we got here. Yeah, and those were some pretty aggressive jumps. It's freaky stable looking. Like in terms of what, like my dad, who's a financial advisor in stocks, in terms of how you look at the real estate data here, one of the things he always says is you want to see a tight chart. You want to see a company that's consistent. And anytime there's any sort of correction, this company really fights going down. It's like trying to break through glass ceiling. It's still trying to fight to go up, because the fundamentals of the company are still good in the way it operates and what it's doing. Side note, Boss Man Pops says, well, he and I were talking about, where are you supposed to turn for a margin of growth? If you've got money sitting in your pocket, what are you supposed to do? And we were talking about it in the context of Apple, trying to get you to turn in your old phone so they can sell you a new one, because ultimately they're just not making a better product. And he said that the three biggest companies that are growing significantly are growing because of iCloud storage. So they're providing, they're basically, so that basically Amazon, Microsoft, I was really bad at guessing these, so I don't want to say what the third one was. Definitely remember it being Microsoft, though. Because I remember an X number of years ago, I invested money, and the company that I bought did not do so hot. And I remember thinking I should buy Microsoft because they were coming out with the HoloLens. Little did I know that there would be all this other stuff, and I would have doubled my money in like 3 years, and didn't do that. So, another good reason to start this thing. So, but he said that what these companies are doing is that they're basically buying up servers, opening mass locations, and rather than selling you these individual servers so that you have to store them and do something or other, that's the whole system of iCloud. They'll just have all the servers. You just pay for the usage. It's a little bit like renting storage space, but for digital information. So all of us who have thousands upon thousands of photos, you're paying one of these companies for storage just to keep all your stuff. And apparently that's really why Jeff Bezos is really crushing it, amongst the other things of like buying a Whole Foods, not a Whole Foods, buying Whole Foods and undercutting other people so you have to go through Amazon. Well, you don't have to, but it's cheaper. And let's face it, the shipping's great. And you have Prime. Free shipping's great. But the real estate charts I'm looking at, they're super, super tight. I mean, I think if you look at any chart, it's crazy how almost predictable they are. You can see, like, it appears to be almost perfect patterns. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful things when the market is so predictable. Makes it very easy to navigate. Yeah. Again, the big numbers were inventory. Yeah, this chart says up by 6.2. Contrasted with the big notes, and I know I may have mentioned this either last week or the week before. Vegas, in contrast, was up by 82% year over year. 6th consecutive month with a year over year increase. That's big. I mean, Vegas has always kind of been a little squirrely that way, but that's not messing around. Inventory in Seattle was up by 272% year over year. Seattle, on the other hand, though, has just blown up. Seattle, Portland, all of it. It's just, yeah, and Denver up by 45%. It's a little bit like pre-recession. San Francisco was kind of cruising, starting to pick up some of these tech places, and they get hit hard. I mean, it's a little bit like fashion trends that way. There was one that I was talking about recently, I feel like. Juicy sweatsuits. When I was in high school, Juicy velour sweatsuits were a huge thing. Those in like either the long shaggy surfer haircut or super buzz cut. Those were like, I was trying to think of the guy equivalent. Screw it. Juicy sweatsuits. Those were the total range. Or Rocket Dogs. Or the Kate Spade, like, perfect little doctor bag. Those things all came and then they all went. And I don't think Juicy even makes those things anymore. But that's just how that goes. I mean, I had this conversation in regards to what makes a company like Chanel or Fendi or Louis Vuitton or Celine or Chloe or Stella McCartney. Any one of these companies that has like an iconic bag, Hermes, for example. Stupidly expensive bag, I've talked about it a bazillion times, but $25,000 bag. Crazy. That's a car. Walking around with a flipping car on your arm. Anyways, the reason why those things have staying power is they're timeless. People always want those. Peplum top, that was really big, like almost 10 years ago now. I don't see peplum tops anywhere anymore. Not a thing. Or like skinny pants. I will still always wear skinny pants probably, but those things are giving way to bell bottoms, wide leg pants. And it's just pendulum swings. I mean, even if you look at presidential winners, go from Republican Trump to liberal Obama. Bush before that, Clinton before that. It's like a system of self-correction. It just happens a lot. And I think that's how that is working with Seattle, Vegas, Denver. You're getting a slight pushback of like, screw it. I think people are going to Boise, like my facialist. Maybe people go somewhere else. I don't know. But it's just the nature of people. People just, they go for it and they get sick of it. I mean, I remember there was even the thing where it was cool to put feathers in your hair. I don't see that anymore. I mean, still have some color, but not feathers. Another unsettling piece of news. Mortgage applications decreased in latest weekly survey. Don't like seeing that. That's part of the problem, is that with interest rates ticking up a little bit here and people thinking, I'm going to put the brakes on, I don't really need to do this right now. Lenders are having to work harder and compete for your money, so they have to come up with those weird mortgages with confusing incomes. Or people are just being discouraged where they thought they could afford this one house, and now because interest rates have ticked up, they can't. I was talking to a guy who likes this house that a friend of mine has listed. And when he first came to see it, probably could have purchased it. And now, he probably, because interest rates have ticked up, I don't think he can. And it's interesting. The psychology of purchasing comes out at times when you see stuff like that. And he's now, I think he's irritated that he feels like he messed up or missed an opportunity. And you get some anger. It's misguided. It's not me. It's just, and the house is listed correctly. It's just pissed off. It's the whole shoulda, coulda, woulda. And I think that's where we're seeing the mortgage applications decrease and why that's irritating and not contributing to good fundamentals overall. Let's put it that way. California existing homes in December, sales down 12% year over year. Inventory up 31%. It's more or less a variation of what we had when I reported the numbers. So again, I said we were at 25% increasing volume of inventory. So this is indicating 6% more than what we had locally. And that volume of sales was down by 33%. So we are down by 21% more. Not wholeheartedly surprising when you get people who are like, my neighbor got this, I want more, my place is so much better. You get a little bit of this kind of activity, especially when interest rates go up and it's kind of this nice little sweet spot. And sellers just aren't, I think they know it, but they're in denial, and at some point you have to accept the fact that the market is what it is. And you can only fight it for so long. Unemployment rates higher in 4 states in December, lower in 3 states. So again, talked a little bit about this at the top. In terms of unemployment, we're no longer seeing significant decreases every week or every month, and it's kind of more wish-wash. And it's not a fully employed economy, but I think based on how they report these numbers, that's not possible. So you're always going to have some amount, but overall it's at 2.4%. No, wait, that's Iowa had the lowest unemployment rate in December. Only 2 states in the DC have unemployment rates above 5%, Alaska and West Virginia. Well, Alaska essentially pays you to live there. And West Virginia, sorry, and this is probably going to bite me in the butt someday, but it's my understanding that West Virginia is the overdose capital currently. I don't know, maybe I'm just being bombarded with Netflix and drug documentaries about fentanyl and the thing after heroin, but so, I mean, not necessarily shocking. Consumer sentiment declined in January lowest since 2006. Not surprising. National economy judged the worst since mid-2014 outlook for it. Issues include partial government shutdown, the impact of tariffs. It's true, we're not getting nearly as much Chinese money as we used to. Instabilities in financial markets. Again, like I said, the Dow was up, NASDAQ down. And then there are just some concerns between Brexit, Germany, deals with China, Russia, Canada, Mexico, Venezuela. Venezuela can't feed their people right now. There are some issues concerning the global economy and how that's going to interplay and how that's going to look. There's been some thoughts of a global slowdown and the lack of clarity about monetary policies. I feel like this entire conversation sounds much more dismal, but again, I still come back to good fundamentals. There are things that are changing that do make me a little nervous, but overall, I wouldn't be saying that I've got investors calling me up saying it's go time if they weren't seeing what I was seeing. And these are people that, newer clients, not under some spell, not, trained by me in any capacity. Just, that's what's happening. Early read on existing home sales, December, big drop. I already talked about that. This is earlier information now. Weekly initial unemployment claims decreased to 230,000. Good number there. Yeah, in terms of the unemployment, our employment's basically been better. We've been more employed across the board since 1973, basically. So to have unemployment rates at that rate and to be beating it for the past what is it? Almost 50 years? 45 years? I'm real good at math. Yeah, about 45 years. Big time. Again, like I said, the fundamentals are good overall. We're gonna, stuff still moving, slowing down. There are some. To me, I think right now it's a lot about calculating. When you take a look at all this data and when you take a look at all these numbers, how do you evaluate where to put the emphasis of weight, right? So, like, if you have a team, and we're, sports reference, if you have a team, do you want to, especially like football, do you want to invest what you can into offense, defense? Because it's a little bit like the concept of Moneyball, right? So you have an allocated budget, now you have to develop a team and figure out how to be as profitable, be as success rates or winning games as possible. So how do you, and it's all just economics of efficiency, right? And I think if you're not well versed in it, concept of economics is just a matter of efficiency, right? How do you become more economical? How do you become more efficient about how you do something? So it's just a matter of where you're choosing to put that emphasis, and what numbers are going to be most significant to you, and how do you evaluate that? So again, I come back to, there's good equity, but it's almost like people have reached like a 10-year low of like, whew, that was a good amount of 10 years. I worked my butt off. I'm ready for a vacation, like kind of thing or something. It's a little bit like what it feels like, and people are like, okay, I'm ready to get in, put me in, coach, and all of a sudden you're like, wait a second, where am I supposed to make a play? Where am I supposed to go? It's tough to kind of figure. I mean, it's like my dad said, those 3 companies, sorry I don't know the third, Amazon, Microsoft, and somebody, they're investing in iCloud storage, not iCloud storage, cloud storage. iCloud is just Apple. But it's hard to kind of run numbers and calculate where you want to put some of that emphasis. So overall, I still think the fundamentals are good. I'm still a little nervous about these mortgage numbers. And by mortgage numbers, I mean mortgage application ratings, as well as lending restrictions and loosening some of those. Some of that's a little unsettling. Overall, though, is it a bummer that maybe locally our numbers are worse than the 6.4% drop? Sure, that sucks. But it's a little bit like the California flight. I mean, there's a number of people who are like, I've got friends who are moving to Arizona. Like I said, the facialist moved to Idaho. I have a friend who moved to Portland, another friend who moved to Germany. People have moved out of the state. It happens. Yeah, it just, not bad, not great. Investors are starting to go buck wild. But like a good example is I have a client who bought new construction last year, and we got a great deal on it. And there was property he was maybe looking at getting instead. Not sure that it'll shake out that way. Stay tuned. And I called around, double check of like, hey, we bought it for this. What do you think? Should we be able to get it for that or better? I understand that there's other new construction. He's got an extra bedroom in comparison to the others, and they're listed at this, and he bought for that. I wasn't expecting him to make any money after a year because it's the new car issue of like, well, now he's lived in it, so now it's not brand new. But because he purchased so well, it's worth what he paid for it, if not more. Great. That's fantastic. And again, some of what will matter, pending he chooses to move forward with something like that, will be how quickly he wants to sell. So if he wants to sell quickly, he has to be aggressive and price accordingly. If not, and he wants his money up, hang tight. No big deal. But that's when, the meeting from this past week was talking about some environmental issues surrounding a particular neighborhood. Not the end of the world, based on how they're reacting to it and navigating the whole process. But it's more and more good evidence or good examples of purchase correctly. If you can purchase correctly, and you don't have to be so calculated about your exit strategy. If you can purchase correctly, then you have some flexibility that you afford yourself at the time when you choose to sell. Because either it's a desirable product, good location, there's something right about it. And I'm such a huge proponent of that. In part because when I work with buyers, I don't want them to call me up and say, oh my gosh, what'd you do to me? Where am I? Can you imagine getting that call and then the internal guilt that I think I would feel would just make me sick to my stomach. So, and hopefully that there are more success stories like this client or the other clients who fix 2 bathrooms and build over $100,000 worth of equity in 6 months because they purchased well and they fixed 2 bathrooms. It's a beautiful thing when you can hear stories like that, and it's super great. Makes me really thankful. But I think you have to be careful of your purchase no matter what, and I think if you're a seller, you have to really determine why you want to sell and what for, and how hard are you willing to list in the market. Because it's going to tell you. And it's going to tell you what you're selling for versus what your neighbor's selling for versus what somebody else is selling for. And it's got to be careful. It's not the end of the world. You will find that point at which point you can sell. But there's some pushback. Because there's still activity, there's still buyers, but it's mortgage applications decreased. Interest rates have gone up. Tax legislation is less friendly for buyers these days than it was 2 years ago. It's not to say that it's the end of the world. It's like I said, I got plenty of investors, and you can feel that investor market just blown up. But it doesn't mean that somebody's going to overpay and, get a 1 to 2% cap rate as opposed to targeting, they're I don't want to say normal cap rates, but a more traditional cap rate of somewhere ideally closer to 4 to 5. Something that defeats the interest rate that they would pay on their loan, at least, in addition to their property taxes. But yeah, it's certainly fascinating. Anyways, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. I know I keep talking about affordability and how that works. Hoping that I can cover that next week and exactly what that means. And I know I kind of sprinkle a little bit about it every week, but probably going to continue to talk about just market stuff and what it all means, and hopefully translating some of it in the context that it's understandable on a day-to-day basis, whether it's I have to talk about it through sports, cars, clothing, or dogs, something. And then for anyone who follows me on Instagram, you saw that Rusty got adopted into a lovely family. So happy for him. He was my latest foster. Nice little lab. Follow me on Instagram, Christina Heimstead. That's He Eats in Mexico, Soggy Tacos and Extra Dry Tacos. In case you were wondering how to spell it, ChristinaHeimstead.com. Probably the best 2 places to find me. And through my website, you can get to my blog and find my email. Contact me with any questions, concerns. Or you just keep watching and comment and like and share and really just ruin it now or for your friend's time. like I do on occasion when I share this video to somebody. It's like, please watch! Please watch how obnoxious I'm going to be. And but in all reality, I mean, it breaks my heart that people doesn't hit home every time. And, you know, hopefully talking about it in the context I do helps people to be more educated on some of this, especially because they don't teach you in school. Again, thanks for watching. Christina Heinstead. Until next time, next week, doing a lot better with keeping up with these. Bye.